broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, Rylan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. So, hey, y'all, thank you for being on the webinar on time. I know it's 9 p.m. right now. We're going to wait a couple more minutes to allow a few more folks to hop on real quick, but this is our From Voter Registration to Voter Education campaign for Region 5. Thank y'all for joining us. If you're joining us right now, again, we're going to wait a couple more minutes to allow folks to get on the webinar. Give a little shout out for folks, but thank y'all for joining us. Appreciate it. Amari, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Amari?
Hello?
Hey, yep, I can hear you.
Yep, okay.
All right, we're going to give it 2 more minutes for a few more folks to jump on, but thank y'all for being here on time. Let me just give it one more minute. Again, thank you for being here on time. Alrighty, y'all, we're going to get started. Thank y'all so much for joining us on our webinar for tonight. This is our Region 5 webinar. And we are talking about going from voter registration to voter education in our voter turnout campaign. What we were talking about tonight is we're going to go over our agenda, which includes greetings from some Region 5 leaders. We're going to do a really quick recap on voter registration tools. We're going to talk about reg, pledge, and databasing, which is something very important that we're thinking about and making sure that folks are informed on and have the right tools to do that. We're going to go really quickly over a voter countdown calendar, and then we are going to go over some voter education tools, and we're going to have an example from actually one of our youth and college trainers from Spelman College about the work that they are doing around voter education and what they're doing in terms of civic engagement this upcoming week. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop a question in the question box below. There's also a resource in the handout. So for folks who are looking to get voter pledges, there's a handout sample of a voter pledge card that you can use. And so feel free to download that. And then at the end, we'll do some question and answer. And again, for any updates about what's happening with the Youth and College Division, follow us at NAACP_YC. All right, so we're going to have greetings from two of our Region 5 leaders. We have Marquise Hunt and Rylan Pendleton on the line. And I'm going to start with Marquise.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Marquise Hunt, National Youth Work Committee appointee. I want to first say that I am excited about where we are as the Youth and College Division. I have seen a lot of work happening from a lot of our chapters across the country as it relates to getting our young people and our members of the community registered to vote, but not only registered to vote for this upcoming election, but actually exercising that right to vote, not just for this year, but for the years to follow. Being a student at Tougaloo College in Mississippi, this past week, we have been able to strongly partner with the National Panhellenic Council. On the last national webinar that we had, I mentioned the MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding that the National NAACP has with the National Panhellenic Council. And so that has allowed us the opportunity to engage with the Divine Nine Greek organizations. I know a lot of historically Black colleges and universities have those organizations, but as well as other colleges and universities and higher level institutions that may have Greek organizations who are doing the same exact work that we are around this time as it relates to civic engagement. One of the things that I will push is that we partner with organizations, not only the Greek organizations, but other organizations that we find on our college campuses that are doing some of the same work so that we are not going in different directions. I find it a lot easier for us to partner with organizations to make the work go a little bit faster and to say that we can actually accomplish something and move on to the next thing. And so I'm excited for the information that has been shared from our national office. I'm excited about the work that each of you are doing, and I'm excited for the outcome of this November 6th election. And again, I welcome you on behalf of the National Youth Work Committee.
Thank you so much, Marquise. I appreciate that. Next up, we have Rylan. Go ahead, bro.
Okay. Good evening, Region 5. I just want to bring greetings from Alabama. We are currently 41 days from our election day. I know these last 2 days have been busy for me. I hope they've been just as busy for you. Getting people registered to vote, giving them information out. I just want everyone to remind you to make sure you take pictures of the registration forms. Things do happen. They get lost in the mail. They get lost at the registrar's office. So if that ever happens, you have proof that you did register or that person did register. Just keep up the hard work. I love seeing the work that everyone's been posting on their social media. I know Alabama chapters have been doing a lot of voter registration this week, and we've got lots of results. So keep up the good work, and let's get this done, guys. Proud of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Rylan. I appreciate that a lot. And I appreciate that effort in terms of making sure folks are being educated about the vote, but also making sure you're talking about voter protection and making sure that folks are understanding really what's at stake here, which is we'll talk a little bit about that today, as well as this Sunday on our national webinar. So really quickly, just to remind folks of our goals for 2018 with our voter turnout campaign. One is to increase voter registration for 18 to 25-year-olds. Number two is to begin to base build so we can shift relationships of power. And number three is to educate and turn out all people of color in your community. And so today, or actually tonight's webinar, was going to be focusing mainly on looking at number one, increasing voter registration, but also looking at number three in terms of how do we educate and actually turn out people of color in our community to vote this election season. So as Brother Rylan spoke about earlier, we are 41 days into the 2018 midterm election, right? So it is rapidly approaching. Yesterday was National Voter Registration Day. And one thing that we actually did launch yesterday on the national side was if you're wondering if you're actually registered to vote, you can check your registration status, update your registration status, and register to vote and share it with friends. And so if you see the link below, it's the bit.ly/NAACPYC_vote. On this link, you can actually check your status. So if you're wondering, okay, am I registered to vote at my current address? Am I registered to vote at all? You can check. It'll let you know if you're registered to vote at your current address. If not, it allows you to update your status and register to vote. And then we also want to encourage you to share this with your friends. And so what we're talking about lately is how do we make the registration process and the voting process something that is part of our community. So the more and more that we're able to share this, more and more that we're able to share with people in our membership, people that exist in our community, the more and more people are actually able to register to vote. And so please share this link widely with folks. Again, as Brother Rylan and Brother Marquis spoke about earlier, all over the country, folks were doing voter registration yesterday. And I just love seeing all the photos and the pictures and the hard work that people are doing in the field. And I want to encourage people to continue to keep up the hard work. Yesterday, I actually had the privilege to go to Hampton University and ODU and actually work with their campuses on voter registration. They had panels, they had information about financial aid, and they were also getting people to register to vote using paper voter registration tools, as well as our online link. And so we're really glad that we're able to kick that off and get that launched. And so again, feel free to use this link, share it with people widely. This is really transforming the way that we are doing voter registration and actually getting people immediate results as soon as possible. So let's keep up the good work, y'all. So really quickly, what I want to go through is just a recap of some voter registration tools and really emphasizing how do we get people to register, how do we also get people to pledge to vote, and also how do we database. What I'm seeing a lot of is that people are doing voter registration drives all over the country, but we're not databasing or documenting the work that we're doing. And so I know I'm seeing pictures and things like that, but we actually want to get into the nitty gritty of how do we actually database the people that were voting, the people that are turning out in our youth and college division, the people that are turning out in our communities. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that before we talk about voter education. So again, right, voter registration is canvassing, right? So high traffic canvassing means going to areas where there's high foot traffic, having conversations with passerbys. And the reason why we do this is so we can connect with people who don't turn out to vote usually. So people who maybe it's their first time in an election cycle. Maybe it's people who don't know what's on the ballot, people who don't really know what's going on or not aware. This is a really great way to connect with infrequent voters. We also want to get people who are going to vote to pledge to vote so that we can give them the correct information in terms of where their polling place is at, what's on the ballot, what's at stake, things like that, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about voter education and voter contact later, but this is really important so that we get pledges to vote so that we can database and then we can actually track how we are contacting people and the amount of people that we're actually registering and the people that we know we're actually going to show out to vote on November 6th. Last but not least, canvassing allows us to recruit volunteers, right? Again, we always talk about that membership is power, right? If we have members, if we have volunteers, we have a strong base. We have a strong group of people who can support us in the work that we are doing. And so, again, this is also a great way to build your base and also increase, the membership in your organization, right? This is a great gateway for folks who don't know about the NAACP to join the NAACP on your campus and to be part of a larger organization who is doing this work. So one of the frequent and mostly commonly used tools that I've actually seeing folks on Instagram, as well as even back in my day in college, is tabling, right? Tabling is a core essential in terms of canvassing, right? This is being able to table in a quarry or your student union or any kind of high traffic area. I've seen people do it at their financial aid office. I've seen people do it at football games, basketball games, parking lots that are very frequented. Any place where there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be coming through, you want to be able to table. So you're going to have your table, your signage, any registration material that you need. You want to be prepared. You want to legitimize yourself and let people know that you are part of the NAACP and why you're doing this work. You want to listen to your people, right? You want to make sure that you're hearing them out, hearing what are concerns of theirs, as well as educating them, right? And so that goes to the next part of agitating, right? Why are you here today? Why are you talking to them? Why are you getting them to register to vote? And last but not least, getting that commitment, right? That's the pledge card, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but making sure folks are committing to registering to vote and then making sure people are pledging to vote so they turn out on November 6th, right? One thing that's very, very important about canvassing and tabling is it's really important not to just sit behind the table, right? Don't sit or just stand behind the table. You want to use the table to draw attention to the information that you were speaking about or the registrations that you're having folks do at the table. But please do not just sit at the table. I want to encourage folks to engage with the community, right? Think about what are creative ways that you can make sure folks are coming to your table, that folks are being attracted to your table. And for folks who are doing this for the very first time, you want to make sure that you have a script for your volunteers, right? So if people are doing this work for the first time, make sure you have some kind of, it could be a couple points, a couple key things that folks can engage with, but ways in which folks can speak to people who are passing by during your tabling event. So a key script or key, go-to script that you can use, right, is when you're speaking to people, asking them if they are registered to vote, and that if they are not, you want to register them right there on the spot. So either using the link or a paper voter registration that you've gotten from either your local library, either from some local elections board, getting them to register right on the spot. You don't want to let them leave before they have registered to vote. After that, you want to make sure that if they have registered to vote, but not at the current address, right? So oftentimes you'll have people who are new freshmen, who are transfer students, people who are new to the community, and they may not be registered to vote at their current address. You want to re-register them right there on the spot. So make sure you handle that there. If they are registered to vote, but they haven't received a confirmation, again, you want to make sure that they're re-registered, right? And if they're all good, what you want to do is make sure that they are they've pledged to vote as well. Another tool that we've spoken about in the past is using class wraps, right? And what class wraps essentially is, it's a short presentation to the classroom of students or local community meeting, basically engaging people in terms of like, hey, we want you to turn out. We're going to have a registration event either on a certain date here or there. and just giving them information about that, right? So what you want to do is you want to talk with people that you have a good connection with, people that you know will allow you to give announcements in their classrooms, maybe politics professors, maybe African American studies professors, maybe professors that you've had class with and you have a good relationship with. Get permission from them first so that you can speak to the classroom and give your short presentation. Be strategic, right? You want to make sure that you are getting your information over in an appropriate amount of time, right? Maybe a class is 70 minutes, maybe it's 90 minutes. The teacher maybe give you 2 minutes to do that, right? So be strategic about what you're doing. Are you having people write their names down? Are you having people give their emails or phone numbers? How are you getting people to commit to what you are giving an announcement about? Get your point across quickly, right? Again, I said you might have 2 minutes, you might have 1 minute, right? So make sure you're getting your point across quickly and you're giving the key facts, right? If you're having an event on Friday, let people know where the event is, know what y'all doing. If there are any social media tools or handles that people can connect with, give them that there. Pass out any materials you have in terms of collecting emails or phone numbers or databasing. You want to do that right there. And then last but not least, like I said, you want to get contacts and commitments, right? So before you leave that situation, you want to make sure that you have the contacts and commitments for people to turn out and be present either at your voter registration drive or if you're having an event where you're getting people to pledge to vote, you want to make sure people are present. Me, as well as many organizers, always say this is the most effective and productive way to do voter registration, right? This is a way where you get in front of your audience. You have a committed time to give an announcement and to speak on what you are doing and actually get people to turn out to vote during that time. The next canvassing tool is door knocking, right? So going door to door, asking folks if they're registered to vote, and if they're not, getting them to register, but also getting them to pledge to vote, right? There are 2 types of door knocking. There's targeted door knocking, and there's blind door knocking, right? So essentially, targeted is knowing exactly who are you reaching, who are you talking to, who are you speaking to, and how and where you're going, right? A blind knock is just randomly going door to door, talking to folks who are available and getting them to either register or to pledge to vote, right? And so what I want to encourage you to think about is think about your campus. Think about what is going to work for the people on your campus, right? If you have access to possibly, a housing list, can you talk with your housing department and talk about, oh, can we go to these dorms and speak with these students, right? That's a way that you can be more targeted, and you can maybe target freshmen or incoming transfer students, or maybe people who are continuing students but that are infrequent and not necessarily participate. This is a really great way to do that. If you don't have access to that, then maybe blind knocking might be your best opportunity to actually engage with potential voters, right? We call this oftentimes the dorm storm, right? Which means going to residence hall, apartment buildings, places where students are living on campus that you can connect with them one-on-one. When you're working with volunteers doing door knocking, you want to create a walking list. So what floors are they going to? What room routes are they doing, right? So that you're not overlapping. And a really great way to think about this is to set a goal, right? So if one person is knocking on doors, they should be able to hit 30 doors and register 5 people within an hour, right? And if we go back to our voter registration math, right? If you have a team of 10 people, right? Just 10 people, 10 volunteers that you can use. If they're volunteering Monday through Friday for at least an hour, right, a day, that should be able to get at least 5 people to register to vote. And if they're doing that for 5 days, right, Monday through Friday, that's 25 people. 25 times 10, that's 250. And in 2 weeks, you have about 500 people registered to vote. And so I'm seeing a lot of great numbers happening. I heard of an event that happened in Mississippi, I believe, today, where they registered 314 people to vote at one event. And that was their whole freshman class, right? And so this was at Rust College, right? And so that's an amazing opportunity. And I want to encourage people to think about, how can I get all of my freshmen to vote, right? These are people who are coming to college for the very first time, who are newly just turning 18, newly people who can participate in the civic process. How can we get all of our freshmen to vote? That's a challenge I want to issue folks to do and kind of encourage people to really target, because that's a really great way to hit a target niche. Next, I want to talk to y'all about phone banking, right? So phone banking is another critical strategy in which you are also collecting voter data and informing people about what's going on. And this is also a great tool to use within voter education. And what you see here below, right, is a simple script, right, where you're talking to folks, you're engaging with them, you are asking them how they're doing, right away, but then you're moving into, why are you calling them, right? Talking to them about, the midterm elections are coming up and it's very important to students, and thinking about, what student issues are going to be affected by the upcoming elections or elections to come, right? And oftentimes, we're thinking about financial aid as students, how do we retain ourselves as students on college campuses. And I think it's very, very important to make sure that you're reaching people and kind of talking to them in terms of what points matter to them. And so again, you want to make sure you're doing your research and thinking about, what issues are going to matter to students on my campus, and how can I, really get them to turn out when I call them, right? So oftentimes you get calls and people hang up, or people don't want to talk, or people are busy. But if you're talking about issues that are relevant to your students, they will listen, right? So thinking about what issues can you talk to them about and advocate for. So again, right, you want to make sure you're asking them on the phone, are they registered to vote? If not, let them know about any upcoming events or locations where they can register. You can also shoot them that link that we talked about earlier, so they can register right on the spot. If they don't have their current address, you want to make sure that they re-register. If they don't have a confirmation, again, re-register them. And another way that we want to indicate that people are pledging to vote, if they are already registered, is having them do a voter pledge. So people can do the text to vote voter pledge by texting NAACP YC to 40649. Again, you want to begin just to also set goals, right? So setting goals is very important, right? So start thinking about how are you going to backwards timeline, and what part of your voter registration drive or your voter turnout campaign you're going to be tackling at different times. And we'll be talking about a countdown calendar in just a moment. So something I want to really quickly hit on today's webinar is talking about how do we register people, how do we pledge them, and how do we database, right? Registering, pledging, and databasing. So on the left-hand side, you see an example of a registration form, right? You want to make sure that you get the appropriate registration forms for your state, but making sure that they're properly filled out and that you can turn them in to your state. Like I talked about earlier on this webinar, in the handout sheets, there is a sample pledge card, right? So you see the sample pledge card where people are putting their name, they're putting their phone number, they're putting their address, right? This is a really great way until you're collecting physical, tangible pledge cards where people are saying, I am pledging to vote and to turn out on November 6th, right? And what this allows us to do, it allows us to database our voters, right? And so folks are asking, why is it important to database my voters, right? People are registering, people are doing pledge cards, but they're like, why should I database, right? Databasing allows us to move into the next step in terms of voter education, in terms of how are we contacting the voters, and how are we letting them know what is actually on the ballot and what they are going to be voting for, so they can be the most informed voters when it comes to our November 6th election. And databasing is super, super, super simple, right? All you need to make sure you have is the name, year, major, right? Maybe you want to start collecting data in terms of like what people are you getting to register and pledge. You want to make sure you're getting an email address, which is very critical, phone numbers, any addresses, and you want to have the question, are they registered? Are they not registered? Are they in the process? Like, where are they in the registration process? Have they filled out a pledge card? And then on our last webinar, when we talked about messaging, usually it takes about 5 to 8 times for people to really, really get a solid message in, or to remember to actually do something. So throughout your voter turnout campaign, you want to be documenting how many times you've actually contacted different voters, right? So you want to have a 1 through 5 voter contact documentation. And so what this looks like is having your student's name, right? Recording that. What is your year? What is your major? Having their email address, their phone number, where they live, and then documenting, right? Have they registered to vote? Yes, no. maybe they've registered to vote, but they haven't been confirmed, right? And maybe they're saying, oh, I'm registered, but I'm gonna check later. And so if they haven't confirmed, you're just gonna put non-confirmed. In addition to that, you want to see if they have committed to pledging to vote, right? Have they said, yes, I'm going to do that, or maybe they're on the fence right now, maybe they're going to do it later. But recording the registration process and the pledging process, so you know where they're at in terms of your turnout campaign. And then after that, you're going to have 1 through 5 in terms of, okay, how have I contacted this person throughout my campaign, right? You don't want to be hitting somebody up every single day being like, are you registered to vote? Are you registered to vote? Are you registered to vote? The best analogy I could think of is think of it like a stereo system where they're being hit with different forms of contacts throughout your campaign that they're able to engage with in different ways, right? So maybe they're getting a phone call one day, maybe another day or another week later they're getting they see you tabling in the quad. Maybe later on they see you door knocking at their dorm or their apartment. And then maybe later on you invite them to a event that you're having on campus where you have invited folks to speak about what's on the ballot or what are happening in terms of the gubernatorial races, right? It can be whatever, but thinking about what are the 5 different unique ways in which you are contacting these voters and documenting it in a database. And what I would advise folks to think about is how can they have maybe like a digital download Friday or a technology Tuesday where they're actually spending time with their volunteers, actually recording this information that you're collecting. I know a lot of people collect information on paper, but it doesn't get translated into an Excel sheet. By having it on an Excel sheet, you're able to look and change and keep it up to date the best way possible and share it with your volunteers or other people you have on staff. And so creating a database is super simple and super helpful, especially when it comes to doing voter registration and getting pledge cards. And so I really want to emphasize this. And if folks have questions, definitely feel free to drop a question. I'll talk about this more a little bit at the end. This presentation will also be provided with you. And so feel free to, copy this database, use it, edit it, do what's best for your campus to make sure that you are able to do what you need to do. Next, we want to talk about a voter countdown calendar, right? So when you're creating a voter countdown calendar, you want to think about what are the different parts in terms of your electoral campaign, in terms of your campaign timeline, and in terms of your school timeline. So when it comes to the electoral campaign, right? When is election day, right? November 6th. What is the last day to register to vote? When is National Voter Registration Day? That just happened. When does early voting end, right, in your state? You want to think about what are campaign timelines, right? When are candidate visits? Like when are candidates coming to your state? When are they coming to your campus? What are major debates, right? Are there major debates that are happening where you can host a watch party, which is also a really great form of voter education, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And when are you going to be releasing any major voting guides, right? So if there are voting guides that are being released by your state or voting guides are being released by our unit, making sure that you are in tune with those dates and keeping that on your calendar, right? So right now we are at almost the end of September, right? And so we have only a little bit over a month until we are at election day. And so for folks who are either in the middle or just transitioning into voter education, right, you should be at a place where you're thinking about, okay, what are the different things at your school where you can be a president at? What are the different campaign timelines that you're coming at? A lot of candidates are coming hard and doing different events in the upcoming month. And so you want to start documenting that so you can let people know either on your social media, at your meetings, through flyers, through tabling events. How can you make sure people are aware of these events and that they can attend and be a part of the larger conversation? So voter education tools. So voter education means providing citizens of a democracy with basic information about participating in the elections, right? So being part of the NAACP, we are a nonprofit, which makes us part of a nonpartisan, giving you nonpartisan information, right? So making sure that we are educating people in terms of just turning out to vote, but not necessarily leaning one way or the other, right? And so 2 types of way that we can do nonpartisan voter education is either letting people know the when, the where, and how voting, or letting people know what's on the ballot. And I'm going to be talking a little bit specifically about what that looks like and what type of events you are able to do. And later on, we'll actually be having one of our youth and college trainers talk a little bit about what they're doing in Georgia at Spelman College. So the when, the where, and the how of voting, right? On a campus, you want to help people that you serve with information that are not always available elsewhere, right? So a lot of people, the reason why they don't turn out to vote is because they don't know what's on the ballot. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how to get information. And so as folks who are doing this work, you want to be a tool or an agent who is able to provide information, right? So using your communications, right? So using, if you have a website, if you have an Instagram, if you have a Twitter, any kind of communications that you are running on your campus, using that or any events or video displays or classes or forums to announce what are the days of elections, where are the early voting periods, again, what are any events that are coming up, right? You want to just flood the system with information, right? And again, I want to think about this strategically. You're not over flooding it, but you're just giving the right amount of information so that folks know when things are happening. So maybe you are creating a calendar that's public for people to know what are the things that are happening in October, what are the last events that are happening for GOTV in November, but giving people access to information as early as possible so that they know when and where to get engaged. You want to remind people of voter registration deadlines, right? So for many states, the last day to register to vote is October 9th. And so making sure that people are getting that done, right? So again, the reason why we're having this webinar is thinking about how are we transitioning from voter registration to voter education? Because as we were finishing up the registration portion, we want to think about how the people that we have just gotten to register to vote are educated so they turn out, right? Because people can register to vote, but not actually turn out to vote. So making sure that folks are well informed as possible. You want to also help people think about early voting, right? So the more people we actually get to do early voting, that also adds some more people who actually turn out. During the voter education period, you're also talking about where are people's polling place, right? So folks have changed addresses, they've changed location. Maybe this is the very first time they're voting on a college campus. You want to help them understand where are the different polling places for them to vote, or what is their unique, again, polling place for them to vote during the selection cycle. Some creative things I've seen people do is I've seen people make short videos with interviews from constituents or staff about why they think voting is important, right? Folks have been seeing a lot of the media and the messaging around that as well, and thinking about, what are things you can do in your units, right? And I want to encourage people, right, to use our Level Up NAACP hashtag, use our Level Up NAACP campaign. I've yet to see a Level Up video happen yet, but I definitely want to encourage people to make those and encourage people to turn out to vote or turn out for this upcoming election. The second type of voter education that we want to talk about is what's on the ballot, right? How do we actually make sure that people know what's on the ballot? So two types of way to do this is to have a nonpartisan voter guide and also to pass out sample ballots so people can see what it looks like, right? Especially for people who it's their first time voting, they might not know what a ballot looks like. They might not know the appropriate way to vote on a ballot, and so giving them opportunity to see it ahead of time before the election day. Another way outside of voter guides or sample ballots is to make sure that you're having things such as candidate forums or candidate questionnaires or communications referencing what the candidates are running on, right? What I want to emphasize when you're doing these types of events where you're having people actually show up is I want you to also think about how are you not leaning towards one candidate in that situation. Again, we're doing nonpartisan work. So how can you make sure you're treating all candidates neutrally and equally? And we can talk a little bit more about how that looks, because I know different people have had different events where different people have shown up. And I think it's very, very important that we are able to give opportunity for everybody, especially in this nonpartisan work that we are doing. All right, so next I want to have Amari jump on the line. So I'm gonna, can you hear me, Mari? seconds. All right, I'm going to get Amari on the line, and she's actually going to talk a little bit about the work they've already been doing around voter education on their campus.
Forwarded to an automatic voice message.
Hey, so I have Amari on the line, and can you just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about the work that y'all are doing at Spelman?
Okay, perfect. I'm Amari Sonoy. I'm the president over at Spelman College. I've been there for 2 years, and I am also the vice president for the Youth and College Division of Georgia. So far this week, we decided to partner with Morehouse SGA, Spelman SGA, as well as YDA to have a week-long event. Today, I did a training on our messaging and building coalitions. So basically, we learned how to kind of have a conversation with individuals when canvassing. It was important also to have everyone have some sort of educational piece or references when it came to educating. We understand there's a very important election going on in Georgia right now for November 6th when it comes to Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. And we wanted to make sure that we had all our volunteers to quick assess information and answer all questions that may be relatable to individuals with canvassing stories. Tomorrow we're going to have when we all go to event. Janelle Monet and Andrew Wright are coming to campus, as well as we're having a live stream video from Michelle Obama to kind of get students engaged, to kind of pull them in, and we're going to have booths to register students, as well as an event on Friday and Saturday. Friday we will register students on campus, and on Saturday we will be registering individuals in the community. As well as we're doing a social media campaign called Personal is Political. So we'll talk about why we feel as if it's important to vote. And this will be starting actually tomorrow when we get to the event with Angela Rice. Hopefully we'll have her on our social media campaign to also explain why she feels it's important. Next week we're going to have some more educational events, how it's important that our education doesn't just stop here. November 6th is important, but we shouldn't stop there. We need to have a voter education and voter registration the cycle throughout the year. And so we're kind of building that platform on Spelman College's campus, as well as Morehouse and Clark Atlanta University, to ensure that everyone is educated. James Woodall and myself have gone over to Clark Atlanta and actually taught 2 classes. So basically we canvassed 2 classes. So we understood that not everyone stops by a table. And so how do we make it mandatory, or how do we make sure that people are actually listening? We actually go into a classroom and we talk to a professor, and we ensure that we are expressing the importance of voting this semester, and we go ahead and we kind of like teach a training on civic engagement. And that's pretty much what we've done so far in Atlanta. Jamar and I have ensured that each college campus in our area has received, their e-boards have received some type of voter registration training. Agnes Scott, University of West Georgia, Georgia State, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta have all received some type of voters education and voters registration training.
Nice, nice. And what I really liked it, what y'all doing is that y'all coupling like tabling with your class reps. Where like, people can avoid tables, people can make sure they don't show up, people can, say, I don't really care about this. But you're also saying like, hey, we're talking to professors and making sure professors are also emphasizing the importance of voting and giving that opportunity in that dedicated class time for y'all to speak on that. And I also appreciate that y'all are also training all of your e-boards in Georgia to make sure that they are also ready to carry this out. And so I'm super excited for what's going on in Georgia. Do you have any last things you wanted to say, Amari?
One thing that we had a discussion on in Cincinnati was it's important that we do say like voters education registration, like yes, our ancestors died for this, but it's also important to bring up relevant issues that are relevant to our generation right now. Today in training, I brought up Wesley Bell being the prosecutor who won in St. Louis County. He's actually going to reopen the Michael Brown case that McCullough decided to not indict Darren Wilson. So we need to bring up those conversations. What's going on currently to where in these areas where change is being impacted our communities, how can we go ahead and push forth those ideas to make sure that other areas are like that? Alabama had a shift. California has had a shift for Kamala Harris and cash bail system. St. Louis with Wesley Bell. Make sure we're using these relevant conversations that are going on with us on a daily that we see on Instagram and Facebook to encourage individuals to vote. It is very important that we hold officials accountable for what they say they would do to bring justice to our communities. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for having me.
Nice. Thank you so much, Amari. I appreciate that a lot. Just kind of wanted to just reiterate everything that Amari is saying and just add truth to power, where I think it's very, very important that we are keeping people accountable and that we're making sure that our constituents and our people are educated as well as informed. Just thinking about all the ways in which you can strategize to make sure that folks are getting the appropriate information necessary to turn out and vote, right? There's one thing we can do is to register people, but I think the next part, which is going to be our challenge, is making sure that people actually turn out and people are aware about what's happening and people can make the appropriate decisions when it comes to this next election cycle. So, talking about what's coming up next for the NAACP in terms of our Level Up NAACP campaign, this Sunday we're actually having a national webinar where we're going to talk a little bit further about voter education and talking about voter protection. And in addition to that, something again that's been asked of me a lot is talking a little bit more about databasing and talking about how to actually form a database. So I'll be talking more a little about that. I know this is a little bit taste of it today, but doing a little bit more about that. And that's kind of coupled with the VAN system and VAN training. On Wednesday, October 10th, we're having a Region 2 webinar, just going over this voter registration and voter education part again. On Sunday, October 14th, we're having a national webinar talking about voter contact and early voting. And so we're talking a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of what happens with voter contact and early voting. Then we'll be transitioning to voter mobilization and direct contact training, so making sure that people are aware of how to actually mobilize people to turn out on November 6th. On Sunday, October 21st, we're having another national webinar. We're talking about GOTV, which sounds out for Get Out the Vote. And so how are you equipped and how are you ready to make sure that you are ready for GOTV weekend, which is the weekend right before November 6th, to make sure that folks are turning out, right? That's when we are really hitting the pavement hard and doing this hard work. And then the last week, we're going to be doing our Region 4 webinar, which is also for voter mobilization and direct contact training. And then right before our election, we will be doing a national-wide webinar, which is going to be our final call to action, where we're just going to, reiterate some of the work that we've talked about, some of the work that's been done, and, really give those last tips and tricks to do the best that we can for GOTV weekend. And then immediately after the election on November 6th, we'll be having an electoral results webinar on November 7th. So I want to leave some room for, we have about 13 minutes before 10 p.m. I wanted to leave some room for folks to ask questions, if anybody wanted to add anything. I know I'm seeing a few folks on the line or on the webinar right now. If folks had questions about anything, we also have, again, that handout that's available if you are interested in connecting your units with pledge cards. Definitely use that. If you also have any questions, definitely feel free to email us at youthandcollege@naacpnet.org. I believe... Yes, I will go back to those dates real quick. Right there. So again, these are the dates for our upcoming webinars. You can definitely find this on our Instagram page. Hey, Dominique, are you, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You can hear me?
Yes,
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Did you want to really give just a quick little just greetings in terms of your position as the board member for Region 5?
Yes. Hey, Region 5. Hope all of you are doing well. Glad to know that you all took the time to join us tonight. As stated before, I'm Dominique Penny, and I'm your national board member. Yeah, and we've been working diligently to get great things done in the region. I've been in contact constantly with our state presidents. Shout out to all of them for the great work that they are doing. Shout out to all of you for the great work you are doing. But I just know Region 5, we're striving, we're trying to do our best. But yeah, anything that you all would need me, just let me know as your board member. I'm willing to help out any way I can. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, Wisdom.
Thank you so much, Dominique. I look forward to seeing you this weekend at our training. Real quick for folks on the line, we're having a training for a lot of the leaders from all across our country to talk about some basic tools to make sure that our units are running effectively and efficiently. And so soon you'll be able to tap in with folks in your state to make sure that you have the right resources necessary for the work that's coming up with our voter turnout campaign, as well as making sure that your units are running effectively. All right, I wanted to hold for any last questions that we have for tonight. All right, so it's looking like we don't have any more questions left. But again, if you have any questions in terms of anything that you saw on tonight's webinar, definitely feel free to reach out to us on our email, youthandcollege@naacpnet.org, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Tomorrow, this presentation will go out to everybody, and so you can feel free to share this with the units, with your members, with your people. And if you have any questions, there will be a survey that will be sent out for you to ask any questions or clarity about anything that went over in this webinar. So thank y'all for attending. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you for being here on time. Thank you for engaging. Again, feel free to reach out anytime. We're here to support y'all. And thank you, Region 5.